The video opens in the middle of a buzzing corporate lobby, where employees hurry back and forth with papers, laptops, and coffee cups. A woman in a sharp blazer, Lena, a senior manager, walks in with her usual air of superiority, eyes scanning the room as if she owns it. She suddenly stops when she notices a man standing near the reception desk, calmly reading a document. He's tall, dressed in a simple black sweater and slacks, and quietly observing the activity around him. Without even greeting him, Lena mutters in Chinese to the coworker beside her, loud enough for him to hear, calling him a servant, complaining that the company lets anyone wander into the building, and joking that he probably came to deliver someone's lunch. Her coworker shifts uncomfortably, whispering that maybe she shouldn't say things like that in public, but Lena waves her hand dismissively, rolling her eyes. She looks the man up and down with a smirk, then tells him, in English this time, to move aside because he's blocking the walkway. The man simply steps back politely, saying nothing. Lena assumes he didn't understand a single word she said, and with a proud flip of her hair, she marched toward the elevators. What she doesn't notice is that several employees nearby heard everything, and a few exchange uneasy glances. The lobby feels heavier now, almost as if the walls themselves recognize the disrespect in her tone. But the man? He just watches her walk away, calm, unreadable, and patient, too patient for someone she believes is beneath her. And that's where the twist begins. Because moments later, as the company prepares for the most important meeting of the quarter, the employees gather in the boardroom to meet their newly appointed global CEO, a leader flown in directly from the company's Asian headquarters, known for his sharp intellect, multilingual abilities, and quiet but powerful leadership style. The room buzzes with excitement and curiosity. Lena sits confidently near the front, bragging to her colleagues that she hopes the new guy actually has some professionalism, unlike certain people she saw in the lobby earlier. The doors open. The board members walk in first, and then the same man from the lobby steps inside behind them. Conversations die instantly. Eyes widen. Chairs stop moving. Lena's face drains of color as she realizes the servant she insulted is actually Marcus Cole, the new CEO. As he reaches the podium, he glances at her with a calm, almost gentle smile, the kind that says he already knows everything he needs to know. And before he even begins the official introduction, he switches into flawless Chinese and repeats her exact words from earlier, word for word. The entire room feels the air shift. Lena's jaw drops. Her coworker closes his eyes in embarrassment. No one speaks. Marcus lets the silence sit just long enough to make the truth unmistakably clear. He understood every single insult. And now, the real story begins, not just about a manager's mistake, but about respect, leadership, and what happens when your assumptions collide with reality. The morning rush filled the corporate headquarters with echoing footsteps, ringing phones, and the blended hum of conversations. Everyone seemed in a hurry, everyone except one man standing quietly near the reception desk, reading through a folder with calm focus. He wore a simple black sweater, clean-cut but understated, not dressed like the executives who normally pass through this floor. His presence was calm, almost out of place in the frantic energy around him, but his stillness didn't go unnoticed. As the elevator doors slid open, Lena stepped out, heels clicking, posture sharp, annoyance already etched into her expression before she even said a word. She was known for having a sharp tongue and an even sharper attitude toward anyone she deemed beneath her. And when her eyes landed on the man near the reception desk, her annoyance deepened instantly. She leaned toward her coworker, whispering, but not quietly enough. "Zhi ren kan ki lai ju xiang zhe putong the yong ren," she muttered in Chinese. This guy looks like some kind of servant. Her coworker stiffened, glancing around nervously, but Lena wasn't done. Why are random people wandering in the lobby? HR needs to control the entrances better, the coworker whispered back. Lena. Maybe he works here, maybe you shouldn't. But she cut him off with a dismissive wave. Please, you can always tell who belongs and who doesn't. Then she marched toward the man, irritation leaking from every step. Excuse me, she said loudly. You're blocking the walkway. Delivery should check in at the side entrance. The man looked up, eyes calm and unreadable, then simply stepped aside with a polite nod. He didn't argue, didn't correct her, didn't even look offended. He just watched quietly as she strutted away, whispering more complaints in Chinese. What she didn't realize was simple. He understood every word, and he remembered. Today wasn't an ordinary day for the company. The board had flown in from multiple countries. Department heads rearranged their entire schedules, and the staff buzzed with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. A new global CEO was arriving, a leader who had already made waves in the company's international branches. Rumors spread across the office. He was brilliant, young, multilingual, and known for transforming entire departments. People wondered what he'd look like, what kind of leader he'd be, and what changes he might bring. Lena, of course, sat near the center of attention, speaking loudly enough for others to hear. I hope this new CEO actually understands professionalism, she said. The company's been too lenient with questionable people wandering in and out. Her coworkers exchanged glances, knowing exactly what she was referring to. But none of them challenged her. They rarely did. Lena's reputation for dismissiveness and subtle insults was well known, but she'd always been careful enough to avoid outright consequences until today. Upstairs, preparations continued. The board rehearsed introductions. HR reviewed protocols. The IT team tested microphones for the 10th time. Everyone wanted a perfect first meeting. Meanwhile, the same man Lena had insulted quietly entered a private elevator away from the crowd. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. In fact, security greeted him with a respectful nod. He rode the elevator up to the top floor, the executive wing, his expression steady, his folder now tucked neatly under his arm. Below, Lena kept repeating her story about the delivery guy, embellishing it with each retelling, earning a few awkward laughs and many uncomfortable silences. She felt confident, comfortable, superior. But every minute that passed was bringing her closer to the moment that would shatter that illusion entirely. While employees speculated downstairs, the executive conference room was filled with anticipation. Board members reviewed the schedule, adjusting their prepared remarks. A few whispered excitedly about the new CEO arriving from the Asia branch, praising his achievements and reputation. Marcus Cole is extraordinary, one board member said. He revived 2 regional divisions and speaks more languages than anyone I've met. Another added, he has this quiet presence commanding without raising his voice. They joked that the staff wouldn't know what hit them, but in a good way. Meanwhile, Marcus, still wearing his simple sweater, stood in a private lounge adjacent to the boardroom. He reviewed the agenda, not with stress, but with clarity. Nothing about him seemed rushed. He had planned to observe the company culture firsthand before walking into his official introduction, and what he had witnessed in the lobby was already telling. His assistant approached, adjusting the placement of the CEO badge that Marcus hadn't bothered to wear yet. Everything is ready, sir. They're waiting. Marcus nodded, thanking her softly in Mandarin, a small detail that hinted at the linguistic skill he would soon reveal more publicly. As the final preparations finished, Marcus took a moment to reflect, not on the insult from earlier, but on what it represented. Disrespect wasn't new. Misjudgment wasn't new. But the workplace culture allowed it to exist unchecked. That was the real problem. And he wasn't stepping into this role just to change numbers and performance metrics. He intended to change the environment. Downstairs, Lena continued her story, exaggerating it proudly. She had no idea that the man she mocked was already standing behind the boardroom doors, moments away from entering as the leader she was about to report to. Her assumptions were about to crumble. The stage was set. The conference room filled quickly as employees took their seats. Laptops closed, whispers quieted, and the atmosphere shifted into a collective anticipation. Everyone knew they were moments away from meeting the new CEO. Lena positioned herself confidently in the second row, close enough to be seen by upper management, far enough to avoid direct responsibility. She smoothed her blazer, checked her reflection in her phone, and whispered to her coworker, "Hopefully this CEO actually has class. I've seen enough chaos for one morning." The doors opened. The board members entered first, forming a line near the front. Conversations died instantly. Everyone stood respectfully. Then, the chairman stepped forward. "Thank you all for gathering," he said proudly. "It is my honor to introduce someone whose leadership has already changed the course of our global operations." Lena leaned forward, eager to see who would walk in. The chairman continued, "Please welcome our new global CEO, Marcus Cole." The room fell silent as Marcus stepped inside. No suit, no extravagant showmanship. Just the same calm, understated presence he held in the lobby. A wave of recognition tore through the crowd. Lena's face drained of color, her confidence evaporating as she realized exactly who she had insulted. Her heart hammered in her chest. The coworker beside her swallowed hard, whispering, "Lena." "That's him." Marcus approached the podium, offering a polite nod to the audience before beginning. But instead of immediately giving his formal introduction, he looked directly at Lena for a brief moment, just long enough. Then, in flawless Mandarin, he repeated every derogatory word she had spoken about him earlier in the lobby. Gasps spread across the room. Lena froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Marcus let the silence settle before switching back to English. "Respect," he said calmly, "is the foundation of leadership." And that was only the beginning. The energy shifted instantly. The room that once buzzed with excitement now sat heavy with shock. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to look at Marcus or at Lena, the woman now trembling in her seat. Her earlier confidence had vanished, replaced by a pale stiffness that made her look almost unrecognizable. Even the board members appeared momentarily taken aback by Marcus' linguistic skill and the direct way he confronted the issue. Marcus didn't raise his voice, didn't show anger. His calmness only intensified the impact of his words. "When we judge based on appearance," he continued, "we reveal more about ourselves than the person we judge." His tone remained steady and respectful, but the message was sharp enough to cut through the tension like a blade. Employees nodded subtly, the weight of the moment sinking in. Many had experienced Lena's dismissive behavior before, but none had ever seen her held accountable, not like this. Lena's coworker whispered, "You need to apologize." But Lena couldn't move. Her throat tightened. Shame burned through her. Every eye in the room felt like a spotlight. Marcus continued with his introduction, seamlessly transitioning into his leadership vision, but the earlier moment lingered like static in the air. He spoke about unity, respect, and cultural understanding ideas, now amplified by the very incident he had just exposed. By the time he finished, the employees applauded, though the applause carried an uneasy edge. As they dispersed, many cast sympathetic yet knowing glances toward Marcus. Others avoided looking at Lena entirely. She sat frozen long after the meeting ended, staring at the floor, replaying every word she had said, that morning words she assumed were harmless, hidden, unimportant. Words she never expected the new CEO to understand. But he did, and her consequences were only beginning. The aftermath of the meeting spread through the office like wildfire. Conversations that had once focused on the new CEO's achievements shifted to whispers about Lena's humiliation. Some employees felt a hint of satisfaction. She had belittled many of them before. Others felt awkward sympathy. But everyone agreed something significant was about to happen. HR wasted no time. Within an hour of the meeting, Lena received an email requesting her presence in the HR conference room. The subject line alone made her stomach twist. Professional Conduct Review. She hesitated before entering, but once she stepped inside, she found the HR director, an ethics officer, and one board representative waiting for her. Their expressions were neutral, not angry, not sympathetic, just professionally serious. They invited her to sit. Tension wrapped around the room as the HR director began. "Lena, we need to discuss the comments made in the lobby this morning." Lena tried to steady her voice. "It was a misunderstanding. I didn't know who he was." The ethics officer leaned forward. Respect should not depend on someone's title. The words hit her harder than expected. They reviewed recordings from the lobby cameras. They referenced past informal complaints from employees. Nothing severe enough to take action then, but enough to form a pattern. Lena felt her world shrinking with every documented detail. She tried to explain, tried to minimize it, but every excuse sounded weaker than the last. Then came Marcus. He entered quietly and sat directly across from her, his expression calm but firm. "This isn't about punishing you," he said gently. "It's about addressing a deeper culture issue." But his presence alone made her feel small, exposed. HR informed her of the possible outcomes: formal reprimand, mandatory bias training, removal from her managerial role. Lena felt tears pressing against her eyes. For the first time, she couldn't talk her way out of a situation. She had crossed a line and everyone knew it. Following Lena's initial HR meeting, the company began a full internal review. Employees were invited to speak privately about workplace culture, not just about Lena, but about broader issues. To HR's surprise, many came forward. Some shared stories of her dismissive comments. Others revealed moments they had brushed aside simply because that's just how she is. One junior employee described how Lena belittled her accent during a presentation rehearsal. Another recalled being publicly scolded for a minor mistake while Lena took credit for team successes. The more HR listened, the clearer the pattern became. Lena's behavior wasn't a one-time lapse. It was habitual, subtle, and unchecked for years. Employees admitted they hadn't reported her previously because they feared retaliation or believed nothing would change. But Marcus's public confrontation had shifted their confidence. They finally felt protected enough to speak. Meanwhile, Marcus conducted his own quiet observations. He visited departments anonymously, listened to casual conversations, and asked thoughtful questions. His calm presence made people surprisingly open. He wasn't gathering information to punish. He was gathering it to transform. As the investigation continued, Lena's anxiety grew. She could feel the change in people's behavior. Coworkers no longer greeted her with forced smiles. Some avoided her completely. Others offered polite but distant acknowledgement. She felt the isolation closing in, realizing how much of her perceived authority had rested not on respect, but fear. Now that fear was gone. By the end of the week, HR compiled their findings into a comprehensive report. It detailed behavioral patterns, anonymous testimonies, and recommendations. The conclusion was clear. For the company to grow, change was necessary. The board scheduled a meeting to decide Lena's fate. And for the first time in her career, Lena had absolutely no control over what would happen next. The board meeting regarding Lena's future was conducted with complete seriousness. Marcus sat among the board members, not as her judge, but as someone committed to improving the company. HR presented the findings clearly, no embellishment, no exaggeration. Just facts. The testimonies painted a consistent picture. Lena's leadership style had damaged morale, discouraged collaboration, and created subtle but meaningful divisions within the team. When Lena entered the room, her usual confidence was gone. She looked smaller, quieter, almost fragile. The chairman began with a tone that was firm but not cruel. "Lena, we've reviewed the investigation. The behavior outlined does not reflect our company's values. Lena tried to speak, but her voice cracked. I never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't know people felt this way. HR responded gently. Impact matters more than intent. Marcus then spoke, not with anger, but with clarity. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of title, appearance, or background. Leadership is about setting the tone for others. You have potential, but the way you've used your position has caused harm. His words weren't harsh, they were honest. And honesty cut deeper than accusation. The board reached its decision. Lena would be removed from her managerial role. She would undergo mandatory diversity and cultural sensitivity training. She would be placed on a 6-month probation period with performance and behavior monitoring. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Losing her title felt like losing her identity. She wanted to protest, to argue, to negotiate, but she knew it was pointless. Every consequence matched her actions. When the meeting ended, Marcus offered a final, quiet message. Growth begins when we accept truth. This is your chance to rebuild. She nodded weakly, unable to speak. The consequences had been delivered, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. In the weeks that followed, Lena experienced the office from a completely new perspective. Without her managerial authority, she returned to a standard employee role, something she hadn't experienced in years. Tasks she once delegated now became her responsibility. Meetings she once led were handed over to colleagues she had previously dismissed or overlooked. But something unexpected happened. With the pressure of status removed, she began to see people clearly, without hierarchy, without filters. She noticed the dedication of junior employees she had once brushed aside. She realized how much her comments had affected the team's confidence. She saw how colleagues interacted more freely now that they weren't under her critical gaze. Her mandatory training sessions were uncomfortable at first. Hearing terms like implicit bias, microaggressions, and workplace inclusivity felt like personal attacks. But as she listened, she recognized the behaviors described. They were hers. Slowly, awareness replaced defensiveness. One afternoon, during a reflection exercise, she broke down in tears, not out of embarrassment, but out of realization. Marcus observed her progress from a distance. He neither punished nor avoided her. Instead, he treated her professionally, offering guidance when necessary and space when needed. His leadership style became a quiet example for her. She learned more from watching him interact with employees than from any training manual. Gradually, Lena began to rebuild trust. She apologized to colleagues, not out of obligation, but sincerely. Some accepted immediately. Others needed time. She didn't rush them. She knew rebuilding relationships couldn't be forced. For the first time in her career, Lena started becoming someone her team respected, not because of her title, but because of her effort to change. Her transformation wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was slow, steady, and real. Months passed, and the company underwent a noticeable shift. Employee satisfaction increased, communication improved, and collaboration between departments flourished. Marcus's leadership brought stability, empathy, and vision qualities that inspired the entire organization, from interns to executives. The changes weren't just structural, they were cultural. One afternoon, as Marcus walked through the office, he noticed Lena working alongside a junior employee, helping her refine a presentation. There was no condescension, no impatience, just genuine guidance. It was a stark contrast to the woman he met months ago. When their eyes met briefly, Lena offered a small nod of gratitude, not the fearful kind from earlier months, but one of mutual respect. Later that day, Lena approached Marcus. She paused before speaking, gathering courage. I wanted to thank you, she began softly. Not for the consequences, I deserved those, but for the chance to change. You didn't humiliate me publicly. You didn't try to ruin my career. You let me rebuild it. Marcus listened quietly, then replied, "Growth matters more than punishment." And you chose to grow. His words settled into her like a promise. As the office prepared for the quarterly all-hands meeting, employees gathered with a different energy than before, one of unity. Marcus delivered a speech emphasizing dignity, cultural understanding, and the importance of recognizing each employee's humanity. His closing line resonated throughout the room. Assumptions limit us. Respect elevates us. When the applause ended, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in years: belonging. Not because she was feared or admired, but because she was accepted. She looked around the room and realized she was part of something healthier, stronger, better. Her journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in that company, under Marcus's leadership, respect became more than policy, it became culture. A culture built not from perfection, but from transformation. As the final lights of the office dimmed and employees began gathering their things for the day, Marcus walked through the halls one last time, observing the environment he was working so hard to rebuild. The company felt different now, lighter, more connected, more respectful in ways that couldn't be faked. People greeted each other with sincerity instead of obligation. Conversations flowed without fear. Collaboration replaced competition. The culture had shifted, slowly but unmistakably. He reached the lobby, the same place where everything started. The same reception desk, the same echoing footsteps. But now, the energy was entirely different. He paused, remembering the moment Lena had looked at him and seen only what she expected to see. Not a leader, not a CEO, not a human being worthy of respect. Just an assumption in her mind, shaped by bias and carelessness. And yet, from that moment of disrespect came transformation, not only for Lena, but for the entire company. As he headed toward the exit, he noticed Lena walking through the lobby as well, carrying a stack of reports. When she saw him, she offered a genuine, humble smile, one earned, not forced. Marcus nodded back, acknowledging how far she had come. Not everyone gets a second chance. Even fewer use it to become better. Outside, the cool evening air brushed against him as he stepped into the fading sunlight. He paused for a final reflection before the scene closed. Respect, he thought, isn't about position or power. It's about seeing the humanity in others, even when no one is watching. And as the camera slowly pulls back, the narrator delivers the final message. Never underestimate the impact of your words. Never assume someone's value based on what you think you see. Because one day, the person you dismiss may be the one you answer to. And one moment of disrespect can echo louder than a lifetime of apologies. Choose respect first, because the world is watching, even when you think it's not. Fade out.